For our first task here on creating, copying, configuring, and deleting groups and OUs, I think it's worthwhile for us to spend just a second or two talking about the academics of groups in Active Directory. Groups have multiple different types, and they also have multiple different scopes. So you'll be creating different kinds of groups depending on what you actually need to use that group for. First up are the two different types of groups in Active Directory: security groups on one side and distribution groups on the other. In every case, if you're attempting to use a group for the dissemination of permission, or in other words, to apply permissions to some folder or other object, you're going to use a security group to do that. The only case where you find yourself using distribution groups is when you're dealing with email and the need to send out an email to a group of users for one reason or another. This differentiation is very simple. So anytime you're dealing with security, you deal with security groups. And anytime you're dealing with email and Microsoft Exchange generally, you're going to deal with distribution groups. Now, when it comes to scopes, this is where things get a little bit more challenging because the scopes can be a little confusing when you first start out. On the left-hand side down here, we have global groups, and global groups can include users, computers. Global groups can include other global groups from the same domain. Most often you use global groups to organize users who have similar functions, so your finance group, your IT group, and so on. And so because of that, these users will have similar requirements on the network. When you're thinking about the best practice approach for using global groups, you most often assign these to functions in the organization. Again, from finance, IT, sales, what have you. This is differentiated from domain local groups, which can also include users, computers, and groups from any domain in the forest. These groups are most often utilized to give permissions to resources and to provide access to resources in the domain where they're located. In most cases, you find that domain local groups actually contain global groups, so that you've organized the users by global groups and you'd organize the resources by domain local groups. I'll talk more about how this works when we get into group nesting here in just a minute. The third group over here on the right is universal groups, and these are kind of a special group that you have to pay careful attention to because the universal groups and the membership of universal groups is something that's taken care of by any domain controllers that are also global catalogs. And so because of that, any change to the membership of a universal group is going to require that membership to be replicated around every global catalog server in your Active Directory forest. A universal group can include users and groups from any domain in the forest and can be used to grant permissions to any resource in the forest. Now, this may automatically make you think that, okay, well, if I can put any user or object or what have you in a universal group anywhere in the forest, then I can assign it for any permission anywhere in the forest. Well, a universal group would be the thing I should use for everything. But you have to be cautious with these because, again, the ultimate power of the universal group comes with a cost, and that being the replication of the membership of that group. If you find yourself using a lot of universal groups, you could find yourself also requiring a lot of replication from domain controller to domain controller. So take care with the use of universal groups and use them in those special circumstances where you'd have multiple domains in the forest and multiple users in those domains or multiple resources that need to integrate together.